Okay, so last week we rushed Fred's story. We're going to recap Fred's story. We're going to take a little more time on it. But before we get going, like last week when we started this chapter, I kind of explained that this chapter has a big significance. And the significance of this chapter is it really proves why we need God. You know, it talks about like suddenly. When is suddenly, right? If the alcoholic has no effective mental defense against the first drink, then when do I need the defense? That is when suddenly comes. I don't know when the fuck I'm going to want to drink, or when the book tells me I will have a blank spot, right? And then when we get into We Agnostics chapter tonight, it opens up by, you know, if when you honestly want to, you cannot quit entirely, or when you start using, you have little control in the amount you take, you're probably fucking alcoholic, right? And if you are, you're suffering an illness which only a spiritual experience conquers. And really, that's kind of the gist of it, right? Whether you believe in God or not doesn't really fucking matter. If you're the real deal alcoholic and you don't get some kind of a power, you will drink again. And the problem with us is we have the allergy. And if the allergy takes over again, there's no saying when you're coming back, right? There's no saying when you're coming back. I know many people that went out for one night and they're fucking dead. Or they went out for a week and they're dead, or whatever, right? It's a real thing. So this chapter, and like Fred's story, we did Jim's story last week, and that was where the suddenly was. But Fred's no different. The only difference in these two is Fred's a high bottom drunk. Jim was a lower bottom drunk, but Fred's more of a high bottom drunk. And what takes him to the drink is something totally different, which you'll see as we read here. Okay.
Okay, I guess I'm going to read it again.
Page 39, middle 39. Of page.
Fred is partner in a well-known accounting firm. His income is good. He has a fine home, is happily married, and the father of promising children of college age. He has so attractive a personality that he makes friends with everyone. If ever there was a successful businessman, it is Fred. To all appearance, he is a stable, well-balanced individual, yet he is alcoholic. We first saw Fred about a year ago, and in a hospital where he had gone to recover from a bad case of jitters. It was his first experience of this kind, and he was much ashamed of it. Far from admitting he was an alcoholic, he told himself he came to the hospital to rest his nerves. The doctor intimated strongly that he might be worse than he realized. But for a few days, he was depressed about his condition. He made up his mind to quit drinking altogether. It never occurred to him that perhaps he could not do so. In spite of his character and standing, perhaps he could not do so. Fred would not believe himself an alcoholic, much less accept a spiritual remedy for his problem. We told him what we knew about alcoholism. He was interested and conceded that he had some of the symptoms, but he was a long way from admitting that he could do nothing about it himself. He was positive that his humiliating experience, plus the knowledge he had acquired, would keep him sober the rest of his life. Self-knowledge would fix it. How wrong is that, huh? Pretty wrong. We heard no more of Fred for a while. One day we were told he was back in the hospital. This time he was quite shaky. He soon indicated he was anxious to see us. The story he told is most instructive, for here was a chap absolutely convinced he had to stop drinking, who had no excuse for drinking, who exhibited splendid judgment and determination in all of his other concerns, yet was flat on his back nevertheless. Let him tell you about it. I was much impressed with what you fellows said about alcoholism, and I frankly did not believe it would be possible for me to drink again. I rather appreciated your ideas that the subtle insanity which precedes the first drink. But I was confident it could not happen to me after what I had learned. I reasoned I was not so far advanced as most of you fellows, that I had been usually successful in licking my other personal problems, and that I would therefore be successful where you men had failed. I felt I had every right to be self-confident, that it would only be a matter of exercising my willpower and keeping on guard. In this frame of mind, I went about my business, and for a time, all was well. I had no trouble refusing drinks and began to wonder if I had not been making too hard a work of a simple matter. One day I went to Washington to present some accounting evidence to a government bureau. I had been out of town before during this particular dry spell, so there was nothing new about that. Physically, I felt fine. Neither did I have any pressing problems or worries. My business came off well. I was pleased and knew my partners would be too. It was the end of a perfect day, not a cloud on the horizon. I went to my hotel and leisurely dressed for dinner. As I crossed the threshold of the dining room, the thought came to mind that it would be nice to have a couple of cocktails with dinner. What do we know that as, everyone? Everyone? It's an insane thought, right? It's insane. That was all, nothing more. And I ordered a cocktail and my meal. Then I ordered another cocktail. Why did he order another one? Why not? Yeah. But we know this, right? We know we've spoken about the physical allergy, right? He had one. He's powerless now. He is now reacting. His body is reacting to an urge that can't be fulfilled. He has to drink now. Then I ordered another cocktail. After dinner, I decided to take a walk. When I returned to the hotel, it struck me a highball would be fine before going to bed. Well, of course it did. So I stepped into the bar and had one. I remember having several more that night and plenty the next morning. I have a shadowy recollection of being in an airplane bound for New York, so now he's blacking out, right? And of finding a friendly taxi cab driver at the landing field instead of my wife. I'm still not sure if his wife was there waiting for him, or if he ditched her, or if he never called her and she wasn't there. Like, I don't know. It doesn't ever say it, but I envision the wife waiting in another area of the airport for him, and he just jumps in a cab and takes off. That's something I might have done, unfortunately. The driver escorted me around for several days. So he was in the middle of a spree now, right? I know little of where I went or what I said and did. Then came the hospital with unbearable mental and physical suffering. As soon as I regained my ability to think, I went carefully over that evening in Washington. Not only had I been off guard, I had made no fight whatsoever against the first drink. This time I had not thought of the consequences at all. What did we talk about last week? We talked about we don't choose the drink anymore, right? The drink chooses us now. And that's the line that we crossed when we became alcoholics, right? I have no longer the power of choice. I can't sufficiently, with any sufficient amount of force, bring the memories of the suffering that I've done in the past, month, week, day even for me at times, with enough force to make me want to stop drinking or not take that first drink. He had thought nothing of the consequences at all. He had no choice. It chose him. I had commenced to drink as carelessly as though the cocktails were ginger ale. I now remembered what my alcoholic friends, these guys that came and visited me, they told me how they prophesied, or Bill likes to say, dropping little bombs in people's lives, that if I had an alcoholic mind, the time and place would come, I would drink again. And damn it, they were right. They had said that though I did raise a defense, it would one day give away for some trivial reason for having a drink. Well, just that did happen and more. For what I had learned of alcoholism did not occur to me at all. I knew from that moment that I had an alcoholic mind. I saw that willpower and self-knowledge would not help in those strange mental blank spots. I had never been able to understand people who said that a problem had them hopelessly defeated. I knew then it was a crushing blow. What was that? What was the crushing blow, do you think? Anyone? Exactly. Complete defeat, he said. And that's a bottom. That's a bottom that we need to find before we have a chance at sobering up. I went through many bottoms until I found the one sufficient enough to make me clean up over 8 years ago. But, you know, that characterizes a bottom. And my page flipped on me. Here we go. 2 of the members of Alcoholics Anonymous came to see me. I love this next line. They grinned, which I didn't like so much, and then asked me if I thought myself alcoholic and if I were really licked this time. I had to concede both propositions. So they were kind of like, told you so. And of course his ego doesn't like that, right? Mine wouldn't either. Mine never did either. But I had to concede that I was licked this time and I was an alcoholic. They piled on me heaps of evidence to the effect that an alcoholic mentality, such as I had exhibited in Washington, was a hopeless condition. They cited cases out of their own experience by the dozen. This process snuffed out the last flicker of conviction that I could do the job myself. Then they outlined the spiritual answer and program of action, which 100 of them had followed successfully. Though I had been only a nominal churchman, their proposals were not intellectually hard to swallow. But the program of action, though entirely sensible, was pretty drastic. It meant I would have to throw several lifelong conceptions out of the window, and that was not easy. But the moment I made up my mind to go through with the process, I had the curious feeling that my alcoholic condition was relieved, as in fact it proved to be. Quite as important was the discovery that spiritual principles would solve all my problems. You hear that? Spiritual principles. I have since been brought into a way of living infinitely more satisfying and, I hope, more useful than the life I lived before. More useful. I mean, I just finished having this conversation with my sponsee. This whole thing is about us changing our way of thinking. It's a complete psychic change, right? We've talked about this several times in the previous chapters leading up to this about how, and especially in the doctor's opinion where it actually says it out loud, a complete psychic change is required, right? But what's a complete psychic change? Does anyone know that? I mean, until you experience it, it's hard to know. For me, the complete psychic change was to go from thinking about self and acting out in self all the time to completely thinking about giving of myself as much as I possibly can. And then I get days like I had today where that went out the window. And it was complete shit from start to finish. And I actually sent a text to these guys and said, man, what a shit day. I really need to be in service. And I get here and I start doing some step work with the guy and I start having conversations with people. You know what? I don't feel so bad anymore. But that's the psychic change, right? I became useful. And when I stay useful, things seem to get better. They seem to go better. My old manner of life was by no means a bad one. You remember? Everyone loved Fred. He was a great businessman. He had suave, charisma. Everyone loved him. Everything he did, it's like everything he touched was gold, except for when it came to drinking. So he's saying, my old life wasn't bad, but I would not exchange its best moments for the worst ones I have now. I would not go back to it even if I could. Fred's story speaks for itself. We hope it strikes home to thousands like him. He had felt only the first snip of the ringer. Most alcoholics have to be pretty badly mangled before they really commence to solve their problems. I had to be really badly mangled. Hey, David? I was in rough shape. when I came and finally got this thing. But I work with guys that aren't. You know, somebody said to me, and it made a lot of sense, we don't have to ride the dump truck all the way to the dump. We can jump off at any time. We can buy into this thing at any time. The hard part is buying into it. I don't know when your time's going to be. I didn't know when my time was going to be. But my higher power worked his ways with me, and I live a life today that's far greater. Do you want me to just finish this? We have another chapter, Bill?
Yeah, give her.
Okay, many doctors and psychiatrists agree with our conclusions. One of these men, staff member of a world-renowned hospital, recently made this statement to some of us. What you say about the general hopelessness of the average alcoholic's plight is, in my opinion, the doctors, correct. As to two of you men whose stories I have heard, there is no doubt in my mind that you were 100% hopeless apart from divine help. Had you offered yourselves as patients at this hospital, I would not have taken you if I had been able to avoid it. People like you are too heartbreaking. Though not a religious person, I have profound respect for the spiritual approach in such cases as yours. For most cases, there is virtually no other solution. Once more, the alcoholic at certain times has no effective mental defense against the first drink. Except in a few rare cases, neither he nor any other human being can provide such a defense. His defense must come from a higher power. Some of us call it God. Some of us call it Creator. Some of us call it Buddha. Some of us call it love. Some of us call it universal energy. Doesn't matter. I passed the line where I could do it on human power. I passed the line where any type of knowledge of myself or any type of willpower that I had was successful in any way, shape, or form. I had to rely on power greater than me. And I don't mean Bill. A divine sort of power. And I'm going to let Bill talk about this because I did a lot of talking last week.
Okay. I'm just going to go back to the start of where Gord read it and just kind of go through a few points. So just to re-emphasize at the beginning of Fred's story, you know, his income's good. He has a fine home. Life's pretty good for Fred, right? He's got a lot of things going for him. You know, he's got a great personality, blah, blah, blah. Everything's kind of good. And many of us are like that. You know, a lot of people like us. And when we're sober, you know, we have a lot of charisma and blah, blah, blah. And we might even have a job still. And maybe we didn't take the garbage truck to the fucking dump all the way yet, right? And then, you know, Alcoholics Anonymous, or as this book is about that, whatever fellowship, they first saw Fred a year ago in a hospital where he'd gone in to recover from a bad case of the jitters. That's where they first met this guy, okay? It was his first experience of this kind. Skip a line. Far from admitting he was an alcoholic, he told himself he came to the hospital to rest his nerves. Let's keep going. For he made up his mind to quit drinking altogether. So this guy realized he had a problem, and many of us have tried to quit altogether because we just had enough of fucking like what alcohol or drugs has done, and we make this decision to just quit. I'm done, right? Well, it had never occurred to him that perhaps he could not do so because he had good power in other areas of his life, and he was a man of character, and he could do a lot of things, but he didn't really understand that this is beyond power of your own will. And that's why they wrote, it never occurred to Fred that he could not do so, in spite of his character and standing. Doesn't matter how much money he makes or where he works or, you know, how much of a family man he is. It doesn't fucking matter. None of that stuff matters, right? Fred would not believe himself an alcoholic. He has no conception of step one. Less accept a remedy, spiritual remedy for his problem. You know, and think about these people that you might have met, or maybe it was you. You're like, well, I'm not really sure I'm an alcoholic or an addict. And like, fuck, I need God in my life for that. Like, much less have a solution of God in my life. Like, I think I'm good. This was a great meeting. It's my first meeting. Thanks a lot, guys, but I'm fucking out of here, right? Those kind of guys. We told him what we knew about alcoholism. You know, we explained to Fred, like, what we know about the allergy and about, you know, maybe the spiritual malady. He was interested, and he conceded that he had some of the symptoms, you know, like some guys do. Yeah, fuck, some of what you say makes sense. And I'm speaking from my own bitter experience of talking to many people who aren't clued into this disease at first, and they're still resistant, and they still don't really understand what the fuck they're dealing with, right? Oh yeah, what you're saying makes good sense, and yeah, those few symptoms sound like me, but he was a long way from admitting he could do nothing about it himself. He's like, but I'll be good. You know, this one meeting really fucking showed me some things, and I really need to change, and, you know, thanks for all you guys being here, and I'm glad that you guys need each other, but peace out, I'm good. He was positive that his humiliating experience, plus the knowledge that he had acquired, would keep him sober the rest of his life. Knowledge would fix it. So we heard no more from Fred for a while. How many times have we seen somebody in the meetings and then we don't hear from him for a while? We hear no more of him for a while. And then one day we were told he is back in the hospital. No fucking shit. That's what always happens. If you're the real deal alcoholic and we don't hear from you for a while, we'll hear from you again. It's either going to be on my Facebook page and it says RIP, or it's going to be, okay, this guy's back and he's fucking hurting, right? This time he was quite shaky, soon indicated he was anxious. I'm going to skip. Let him tell you about it. I was much impressed with what you fellows told me about alcoholism. Frankly, did not believe it would be possible for me to drink again, because they just think that they're not going to drink again. And this is the same thing with somebody who did a step 5 spiritual awakening. Somebody who does a step 3 spiritual awakening. You can do a step 3 and have a really good feeling. Sometimes the effect was great. And same with the step 5. You feel like you're walking hand in hand with your creator. You feel the nearness. You can look the world in the eye. These things are profound parts of working through the program. But that's not enough, right? I did not believe it would be possible for me to drink again. I rather appreciated your ideas about the subtle insanity which precedes the first drink, but I was confident that it could not happen to me after what I had learned. I reasoned I wasn't so far advanced as most of you fellows, and I'd usually been successful in licking my other personal problems, and that I would therefore be successful where you men had failed. I felt like I had every right to be self-confident, that it would be only a matter of exercising my willpower and keeping on guard. You know, and how many times have we seen that guy? Okay, I'm just going to keep on guard. I'm not going to go to the bar. I'm just going to fucking, oh, there's liquor there. Oh, Christmas party. Well, no. Like, it doesn't fucking happen like that, right? And I just want to touch on something here on the chapter working with others, if I can find it quick enough. So if you guys want to flip there just quickly, page 101. Actually, I'm going to start at the bottom of 100. Assuming we are spiritually fit, we can do all sorts of things alcoholics are not supposed to do. People have said to us we must not go where liquor is served. And if your sobriety is based on I can't go there, you'll fucking drink again probably, okay? We must not have it in our homes. We must shun friends who drink. We must avoid moving pictures which show drinking scenes. We must not go into bars. Our friends must hide their bottles when we go to their houses. We mustn't think or be reminded of alcohol at all. Our experience shows that this is not necessarily true, and it's not true. I've dated women who fucking drink, and they have liquor in their houses, and, you know, they are worried that I'm going to drink because they got a bottle in their house. I don't give a fuck. Drink away, man. You want to have a fucking couple drinks? Go ahead. Fuck, makes you more horny. Fuck works for me. Right? That's my drug. Right there in that night. We meet these conditions every day. An alcoholic who cannot meet them still has an alcoholic mind. Again, I'm going to read that. We meet these conditions every day. You can't go through life and avoid liquor, man. You walk out the fucking door, it's right there. It's everywhere. We meet these conditions every day. An alcoholic who cannot meet them still has an alcoholic fucking mind. There is something the matter with their spiritual status. His only chance for sobriety would be someplace like the Greenland ice cap. And even there, an Eskimo's gonna fucking turn up with a bottle of scotch and ruin everything. Ask any woman who has sent her husband to a distant place on the theory that they would escape the alcohol problem. You ever go somewhere like Mexico or across the world to try to get away from it and then you just find it anyway? Right? I know this guy, he went to a missionary in India, and it was way out in the middle of the bush where there was no fucking alcohol or drugs. Well, this guy found some somewhere, and he spent like an extra 2 months there getting drunk with the fucking native guys out there, right? And I know another guy who his parents also sent him to India, but he went to like the meditation places, and it never got him sober, right? His parents are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on their kids, sending them across the world to get them sober, and the theory of God will not get or keep you sober, man. Right? There's a process here. It's like uncovering, discovering, and recovering. You got to uncover what the fuck is going on inside you. The Roland Hazard story again. Emotional displacements and rearrangements, ideas, emotions, and attitudes that are the guiding forces of our lives have to be exposed and cast aside. We got to look at the things that drive our fucking lives. The book talks about I'm driven by 100 forms of fear and self-delusion. I am. When I did my 4, I could see I was driven by fear. 50 fears, 40 of them not real, 40 of them, the 40 unreal fears that weren't even real, drove 95% of all my actions in my fucking life. And then the self-delusion, no one talks about the self-delusion in the program. That's really important. The book fucking says it, and I take the book as the word. I'm driven by fucking self-delusion, which is lies that I tell myself and I believe they're true, but I know they're fucking lies. Right? So these things are important to like fucking remember and remember when you're out there in life going, oh yeah, I'm fucking full of self-delusion. Fuck, maybe this is a fucking lie I'm telling myself. And then talk to your sponsor and get some counsel on it, because it's really important to fucking talk to other people that know this disease so that they can see the shit we can't see, because when you're operating in self, you can't see self. Right? So anyway, I'll finish with this little paragraph on 101. In our belief, any scheme of combating alcoholism, which proposes to shield the sick man from temptation, is doomed to failure. You can't shield yourself, man. White knuckling doesn't work. If the alcoholic tries to shield himself, he may succeed for a time, but he usually winds up in a bigger explosion than ever. We have tried these methods. These attempts to do the impossible have always failed. So back to 41. Or 40, sorry. Okay. Bottom of the page. In this frame of mind, I went about my business, and for a time all went well. Okay, exactly the same as Jim's story. Jim's story said all went well for a time. Well, Fred's story rewords it and says all was well, all went well. It always goes fucking well when you first stop drinking or using. Everything always goes well when you put it down for a little while. Just like Fred, just like Jim, just like fucking Gilbert, just like Hector, just like Robin, just like me. It all went well for a time, till it didn't. One day I went to Washington to present some blah, blah, blah. I'm going to kind of skip around. Next paragraph. I went to my hotel and leisurely dressed for dinner. I crossed the threshold of the dining room. And look what's in italics. Because the big book, when it's in italics, it means it's pretty fucking important. Crossed the threshold of the dining room. the thought came to mind that it would be nice to have a couple cocktails with dinner. That was all, nothing more. Why is it a talist? Gord touched on it. Because it's the insane, trivial excuse. That was all. I'm just going to have a couple cocktails with dinner. Not to mention that my life usually goes to shit the minute that I do this, but I'm okay today. It's going to be different today. So I ordered the cocktail in my meal, then I ordered another cocktail. After dinner, I decided to take a walk. When I returned to the hotel, it struck me a high would be fine before going to bed. And Gord's bang on. The allergy is set off. So I stepped into the bar and had one. I remember having several more that night and plenty the next morning. I have a shadowy recollection of being in an airplane bound for New York and finding a friendly taxi cab driver at the landing field instead of my wife. The driver escorted me about for several days. We drove around and we went to strip clubs and we found hookers and we snorted coke off their asses and we did all sorts of crazy shit, and I woke up in places I don't even want to fucking let you know. That's kind of what happens. And so he wakes up, and then came the hospital and the unbearable mental and physical suffering. And I'll tell you, when I blacked out, I fucking woke up in some fucking places and situations that I was just like, holy fuck. If anybody knew about this, I would have to kill myself. Anyone else? Come on, there's got to be higher hands than that. Fuck yeah.
Who said no?
Those are my peeps right there. Those are my people right there, right? And like when we read the beginning of There's a Solution, it talked about, you know, the camaraderie and joyousness that pervade the vessel from steerage to the captain's table. That's one of those things that hold us together. Is that what I just mentioned, where all you guys put up your hand? You guys have all fucking been there. But that in itself would never have held us together as we are now joined, right? The God part of the fellowship of the Spirit part is really what fucking binds us together. So just that fellowship of tradition 3, you have a desire not to drink or use, just that alone won't do the trick, right? There's 2 fellowships. Tradition 3, I have a desire, you have a desire. That's not enough to keep you sober. Anyway, I'm going to flip the page. Let's go to the other page. They said, though I did raise a defense, it would one day give way before some trivial reason for having a drink. Well, that just did happen and more. From what I learned of alcoholism, did not occur to me at all. I knew from that moment that I had an alcoholic fucking mind. I saw that willpower and self-knowledge would not help in those strange mental blank spots. When's the blank spot, man? When the fuck is it? Suddenly. We don't know. That's why we need God. But the theory of God is not enough to fucking match the blank spot. The theory of God will actually act as an effective mental defense. So the theory of God can act as an effective mental defense. So you'll be at the podium on Wednesday at a meeting and go, oh, fuck, I'm 6 months sober. Me and God are so tight. Thank God for keeping me sober. And then Friday, I'm at the same meeting. He's like, fuck, I relapsed. And I saw that happen over and over and over and over. And I'm like, how the fuck is this possible? How can Wednesday, he's fucking, him and God are like the tightest thing since margarine and bread. And fucking 2 days later, he's fucking drunk and high. And I just kept watching this and I'm like, fuck, man, these guys are working on a theory of God. And they're fucking self-willing the principles in their affairs. And they're not following the fucking processes and the direction to allow God to work in and through them. Because through the processes of relinquishing like the anger and the lust and the self-worth stuff that keeps us in self-pity and victim mode, through like exposing these things and not getting what it is you want, you fucking get closer to God, and then he's like actually working in and through you through the processes. So when you get the thoughts of drinking or drugging, it's quickly matched with God, And the fleeting thought of drinking, it like trickles away and it doesn't fucking consume you all day. Whereas when God's a theory or when you're white knuckling, that fucking thought doesn't really go away. And you're always fighting it. And you can see in the meetings, people will share, I still have the thought, I still want to drink, and I'm 10 years sober, and thank God for these meetings. Dude, one day you're not going to have a meeting. One day you're not going to have your sponsor. COVID. One day you're going to be fucking in the Greenland ice cap. Then what?
COVID, prime example.
Right? Yeah.
Right?
So it's really important that, like, our message is about, like, no theoretical God, practical application through the directions in the book produces actual God in our lives. Anyway, let's keep going. So 2 of the members of Alcoholics Anonymous came to see me, and they grinned, and I'm one of the grinners. I'm like, I fucking told you. And this is one of the things I do. I prophesize. I predict the future of people in their fucking recovery. In meetings and up here on the fucking stage, or I guess in front of this table. But as a sponsor, whether it's your sex conduct, your job, not being able to like turn down the job up north, or different aspects of sponsorship. And I'll let anyone do what they want, but I will suggest strongly that they don't do that. And then I'll say, because this is what normally happens. And then I'll give them what normally happens. And then they'll do what they want to do anyway. And then what happens is what normally happens. But the benefit to that is the next time they come around, and if I sponsor them again, they're way more willing to fucking listen the second time around. So it's not always a bad thing either. I had conceded both propositions. So he accepted, okay, they grinned, which I didn't like so much, and then asked me if I thought myself an alcoholic, yes, and if we were really licked this time, yes. I conceded to both propositions. They piled up on me heaps of evidence to the effect that an alcoholic mentally such as I exhibited in Washington. So 2 things. He conceded to his innermost self that he can't do it alone. And then, as a good stepper, you pile on all the bullshit that their life is about, and you fucking generate humility in them so that they feel really small and they need help. And that might sound like sadistic, but when you read the chapter Working with Others, it tells you to do these things. It's very effective, right? The chapter Working with Others is the exact do's and don'ts of how to do what we do here. The problem is not many people do it, and they don't really read it twice, so they just do what they think they should do, and it takes a long time, and it really doesn't benefit the person that you're working with typically. But everything's, not exactly black and white either. I had exhibited in Washington was hopeless condition. They cited cases out of their own experience by the dozen. This process snuffed out the last flicker of conviction that I could do the job myself, part of the concession of step 1. They outlined a spiritual answer, program of action, not theory, not fucking self-willing principles. I'm just going to be honest today. Fuck, when you just try to be honest, you're not capable of honesty on your own. You can rationalize and justify the most errant bullshit to suit every action in your life and every inaction in your life. That's the benefit of fucking working the steps and working with people that fucking care more about your life than your feelings. And when you understand the word rigorous honesty, rigorous means accurate. 99% of people, when I say what does rigorous mean, they say, it means like to give her, to go for it. No, man, it means fucking accurate. Let's get accurate, right? But I'm not capable of that on my own because I have a fucking illness of rationalizing my own bullshit. And think of the word rationalizing. Rational lies. I've been doing that my whole fucking life based on the behavior I've had to do and lived with and fucking look in the mirror. I got to live with myself, so I have to lie to myself with the shit that I do. And I'll still do that in recovery. They outlined spiritual program and action, blah, blah, blah. 100 of them followed successfully. Though I had only been a nominal churchman, their proposals were not intellectually hard to swallow. But the program of action, though entirely sensible, was pretty fucking drastic. Which is why when you work with a non-alcoholic in the 12 steps, because their life's not on the line, they typically won't do the work that we'll do. We're willing to fucking do this work because we know we're gonna die. And especially if you're a chronic relapser and you fucking tried this on your own so many times, you get a sense of urgency where you're like, my sponsor's a fucking asshole, but I'm gonna listen to him, right? Whereas a normal person's like, why are you being so fucking rude to me, right? So the urgency of like normal people doing this work, it's quite different, right? We'll do it because our lives are on the line. They just want to do it because they see how nice and awesome you are. But then when it really comes time you push their buttons in this stuff, they're like, fuck that. I don't want you to call me on my shit, right? Then I would have to throw several lifelong conceptions out the window. Ideas, emotions, and attitudes. What the fuck are they? I have to throw those out the window and allow new set of conceptions and motives to dominate me. Happens through the directions, not self-willing the principles. That was not easy. That's fucking hard. So you can do it the easy way, or you can do it the hard way. The hard way will take you to the fellowship of the Spirit, and the fellowship you crave will grow up about you. It's just a different life, man. Or you can do it tradition 3 style and fucking be around in the fuckery. There's a lot of fuckery in tradition 3, man. And the program's based in tradition 3. So if you want something exceptional in life, you got to do something exceptional. And you got to do things that are harder than what other people are fucking doing. And it's not easy. This is not easy. It takes a lot of discipline, it takes commitment, and it takes a lot of trust in God. And it takes the disciplines of the step 10. What step 10 really does is it identifies your will, and then you don't get what you want, but it equals the principles. Step 10 will result in the principles. So when you act in the 10 and then you look at all the principles that came out of fucking not getting what you wanted or whatever, they're all there. But most of us will just act in like, oh, there's my spiritual principles. I was kind, I was compassionate, I was nice. No, when you fucking didn't get what you want, there's courageous because you trusted God. When you didn't get what you want, that was fucking perseverance because you really wanted it, but you fucking went with God. So the results are the principles. You don't have to fucking worry about the principles because they just become the result. But the moment I made up my mind to go through with the process, I had the curious feeling that my alcoholic condition was relieved, and as a fact it turned out to be. So when you make the decision to really go through with the process, there's like a relief. It's almost like, oh, fuck, okay, let's just do this. But then as things go along, it can be harder too, because a lot of times when people start the steps, their ego wants the steps because look at everyone else. Fuck, I want that. And then when the ego fucking makes the decision, and then the ego starts getting beat the fuck along the journey, it's like, no, I don't want to get fucking beat up along this journey. I want to run the show and control. So it becomes like there's a spot in there where it's like, holy fuck, really? Do I keep going like this? Because it's a big commitment, right? Seems like I would want to live like that, but going through the pain and doing that, it's almost like running. I run away from it. But I always try to encourage people not to run. Just trust. You got to trust. And the only way to trust is, even though you might believe that it worked for me, you still got to do it. And there's no fucking guarantee that what I'm saying is going to happen for you. So it becomes a leap of faith with all the parts of where you're needing to trust and where you're not getting what you want. Maybe that's the job you were fucking killing for most of your life, and finally it comes along and your sponsor says, that's not the one, I don't think. And you're like, no, that's the one. But if you trust your pillars and they say that's not the one, and you're like, fuck, okay. And you don't take it. Now you're broke for another 6 months and you don't know what to do. Where that security, it fucking looked nice. It looked good. But you didn't take it because you trusted your pillars or whatever, right? That's hard to do. quite as important was the discovery that the spiritual principles would solve all of my problems. Like Gord said, that's fucking... And it's not really that the principles solve the problem. The processes that result in the principles solved my problem. And we go from a step 6 type of humility where we're fucking fighting and fighting to a surrender of step 7 type of humility where we fucking trust God. And then it becomes a working part of our mind. We come to rely upon it. We haven't sworn off the defects of character. They've been removed. We recoil from the defects of character as from a hot flame. And these things don't fucking even, it's not even a second thought. It's like, no thanks. I don't want that. I don't need that anymore. So anyway, I think that's really, I'll just finish with this and then I'm going to shut it down. Almost. I just remembered I had one more thing to say. I have since been brought into a way of living which is more satisfying and I hope more useful than the life that I lived before. And that's very true. And when I say these things, I always think about my ex-wife. Because my ex-wife had her good because I made a lot of money and she had all the security she wanted and she was under my wing and I always protected her. And then when I destroyed our lives, she wasn't under my wing. She had no more protection and then she had to fend for herself. But for me in my journey, I had to lose my family. I had to lose it all, or I never would have found out the fucking things that I needed to learn about myself. And so to me, it was what my soul needed. I don't know what her soul needs. I think she might have to find it still. And same with my kids, right? And, they're on their journey though. And I can be there to help them, but I can't do it for them. Anyway, at the bottom of the page, once more, the alcoholic at certain times has no effective mental defense against the first drink. And I never say what I'm going to say at big book studies, but I'll say it today. I never use this to what I think that it actually means because I don't want to give people the fucking idea. But I'll say it today. Once more, the alcoholic has, at certain times, has no effective mental defense against the first drink, except in a few rare cases. What does that even fucking mean? Neither he nor any other human being can provide such a defense. His defense must come from God. Except in a few rare cases, it says. When is that? Well, my interpretation of when that is, it's like when somebody's has some program in them and they're going to drink and they hold on so fucking bad because they don't want to drink. Or they're fucking going to drink and they know they're going to drink and they fucking find some way to make that call. And a human power gives them something to fucking bite into for the moment. Except in those few rare circumstances where somebody wants it so fucking bad. They'll reach out or they'll find that spot within them that they won't drink or use. But in a sense, it's almost God anyway.
Exactly.
Hold on. Amanda, is that microphone working? Okay.
I was just going to mention that, well, in my first 2 years of sobriety, I had 2 years and I relapsed for 4 days and I went back to treatment. I was working, and this is where I started struggling, like in between, it was like the idea of, am I a hard drinker or am I not a hard drinker? Like, am I the real fucking deal? It was me and my sponsor were looking at it. She's like, Amanda, do you really? And it was the idea because I'm like, but I was using it and I stopped. She's like, it was God. It was God, Amanda. That is why. Because of, again, like you were saying, the program was in me. I continued to push the program. I did the things I was building and I lost myself and I went back to treatment. But I struggled because of that idea. I was like, well, I stopped and I didn't. So that was where my process starting when I was looking at, well, maybe I'm not the real deal. But my sponsor kept telling me, Amanda, it was God. It was God. And that's why.
Thank you. Okay, over here. Vern?
Yeah, you do.
You weren't here last week, right?
Because there's blank spots in the program. Zoom people can't hear it, so they just sit there and listen to silence. So.
And then my editor gives me shit later.
Yeah.
And then he's like, that Vern fucker, he's fucking denied the mic twice.
She's not, okay. So anyhow, I look at this like, okay, with early guys, my sponsees who don't have God in their life yet, the only way that these few rare cases happen is these things come in two parts. You have the insane thought and then the plausible excuse. If you make a phone call when you get the insane thought, call your sponsor, go to a meeting, call a 12-step pillar, before the plausible excuse kicks in, you got a fighting fucking chance. But once that plausible excuse kicks in, you're fucked. You're done. So I figure that's your few rare cases if you catch it at the first insane thought. Make a phone call. Tell somebody.
Makes a lot of sense, bro.
Yeah.
I love that.
Plausible excuse, you're fucked.
Any other questions or comments on what we read here before we go to break? Okay, let's take Gord, anything else before we go?
No, I was just looking to Zoom to see if anyone there wanted to comment on anything. But Julie's all over it, so it looks like we're good. No, I'm good.
Okay, 15 minutes. We'll get back to the podcast in a second. The opinions expressed on this podcast are solely of the guest sharing or myself. We have no affiliation with any 12-step or recovery program. And if you do like our work, please consider visiting BILLWARDLIFE and supporting what we do. Now back to the podcast. So we're going to start on We Agnostics. We just finished step one. Step one's critical step. It's half of the 103 pages or so of what the 12 steps are. So now we're into We Agnostics, which is the first step in the solution. I don't know about Gord, but this is my favorite chapter to deliver out of the big book. But step 7 is my favorite step to deliver out of the 12 and 12. But this one here is my favorite when I take people through the study or when I take people through the steps. I've seen this chapter being delivered like we're going to deliver it. I've seen it change people's lives. And I'm going to say more of the second half of the chapter. The first half of the chapter, to me, doesn't have the depth and weight as the second half. But then when I do big book studies with Jesse, he has this first half with full of depth and weight. So, I don't know. I prefer the second half, though. Your take?
Yeah, I like the whole thing, man. I really do. It's there's a couple lines in this chapter that just really have shaped who I am as a person. And well, I'll talk about that when we get there.
One thing that I want to talk about, on the top of my page, I always write shit when I first did this. This chapter is about how and where to find God. That's what it's about. How do you find God and where the fuck is he? He's within us. And it'll tell us, in a way, how to kind of find him and how important it is. And then the other part of it is to prove that he's there. And then the other thing I have on the top of my page, this whole chapter is about open-mindedness, right? And for anyone on Zoom that has or in here also, that has an issue with God, the whole reason why we try to have open-mindedness, especially for We Agnostics, is so that you believe that maybe something can help. That you're not closed off to the idea of God. And like I said before, I would not say the word God and I wouldn't say creator. For many years, I didn't say either of them. I did say higher power. And I did talk to my dead grandma. And my dead grandma was essentially the one that kind of got me started. And then eventually I just said God because it was just simple. It's 3 letters, God.
Is there anybody, sorry, Bill, I just want to interrupt. Is there anybody in the room or on Zoom, show of hands or whatever, that kind of their sphincter tightens up when they hear the word God, or they get that cringy feeling when they hear the word God? Tommy, yeah. Garrett, any people there? Yeah, I mean, I felt that way too. I don't anymore. That we're going into this chapter and you're going to hear that word hundreds of times, as well as fuck, I think. right? But we're side by side. It's pretty fun, right? That's why I said what I said at the beginning of this meeting. And as some of you know who have been here every week, that's the first time I've said that. And there's a reason for that. We're going into a chapter that completely talks about God. So it's important that you understand that you don't have to feel cringy when you hear it. The whole idea behind this is, like he just said, to open your mind to just something different. You know, to open your mind to a spiritual solution, however you see that right now. Whatever works for you in this moment. What started for me, I hated it because I didn't understand it and I didn't believe I deserved it. And so that's what made me cringe. And I learned that I didn't have to understand it. In fact, I learned that I would never understand it. But now I have some, it started out as blind faith because I had no choice. I was in jeopardy. And I had to open up to it. Isn't that funny? I think we're going to actually talk about that in a minute. The option of drinking to death or accepting spiritual help. Why is it so difficult to make that choice for me? But it was very difficult. And all I had to do was open my mind and be willing. And my life has changed drastically, and some of you know that. Some of you saw me when I was in my cups, as you will. Nice to see you. And some of you know me now, and you've seen the change. And that's not me. It's not me. That is not me. And I don't really know what it is exactly, but I know that it is a higher power of sorts, something spiritual. So I hope this chapter doesn't freak anyone out, but I do hope that it makes you think. Right.
Okay. We Agnostics, chapter 4. In the preceding chapters, you have learned something of alcoholism. We hope we have made clear the distinction between the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic. And that's what those first number of chapters do. They give you a clear differentiation of what a heavy drinker is and what a real alcoholic is. If when you honestly want to, you cannot quit entirely. Have you tried to quit and stay quit? Or if when drinking you have little control over the amount you take, you are probably an alcoholic. So if you've tried either of those, you've tried to quit and not been able to stay quit at any point in your life, or if you've done it a number of times and you haven't been able to stay stopped, or if you have little control in the amount you take, you're probably an alcoholic, right? If that be the case, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer. Which is why we do this study for real deal fucking alcoholics and addicts. This isn't for a heavy drinker. The basic modalities of society, treatment, and working with substance abuse counselors, that's moderate drinkers and heavy drinkers do very well with those. But we seem to fall through the cracks. And then we think we're just fucked because it worked for some of these other people, but that's not working for us. Until we come here and we find our people, and the people that share, we're like, well, that explains many things for which I could not otherwise account. That makes sense to me. That guy's fucking me, man, right? And so we're different. We're not regular alcoholic or drinkers. And if that is the case, you're suffering from an illness with only a spiritual experience can conquer. What's a spiritual experience? Can someone tell me what a spiritual experience is? Okay. In the chapter, Spiritual Experience, on page 567, it says, it's a personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism. That's what a spiritual experience is. It's not that you go home and fucking sit on a gong pillow with your gong and meditate and have some big miracle happen where you're fucking different.
Bang a gong. Get it on.
It's a personality change, man. It's a personality change sufficient to bring him, or we can also call it the psychic change, or we can call it moral psychology. Egoism versus altruism, going from ego to altruism and trying to change the ideas, emotions, and attitudes, exposing those, seeing what they are, and trying to let a new set of conceptions and motives dominate us. Instead of living in a fear-based reality, we turn and we try to live in like a love-based reality, which doesn't happen just because you want to. It happens through the processes of the book. To one he feels as atheist or agnostic, do you totally not believe in God? Or maybe there's something that you believe in, but you're not going to call it God. Such an experience seems impossible, but to continue means disaster, especially if he is an alcoholic of the hopeless variety. To be doomed an alcoholic death or live on a spiritual basis of life are not easy alternatives to face. Of course they're not. But it isn't so difficult. About half our original fellowship were of exactly that type. At first, some of us tried to avoid the issue, hoping against hope we were not true alcoholics. But after a while, we had to face the facts. What are the facts, Bill? That we must find a spiritual basis of life or fucking else.
Or else.
It's this is what they call, or I've learned it to be called, the step 2 ultimatum. It's like it's an ultimatum. You find a spiritual basis of life or else. And then Bill W., he's really amazing in how he writes his literature. He doesn't like mistake a period or a fucking quotation mark, or like, he's very distinct in how he writes this stuff. And I've noticed over the years of kind of studying his literature that on a certain point that's really important, he'll hammer it twice, like right away in on the same page. And so he's going to give you the step 2 ultimatum again here. Or else, perhaps it is going to be that way with you. But cheer up. Something like half of us thought we were atheists or agnostics. Our experience shows that you need not be disconcerted. Oh, sorry, the other ultimatum was up above. To be doomed an alcoholic death or live on a spiritual basis of life are not easy alternatives to face. Anyway, I love this piece. If a mere code of morals or a better philosophy of life were sufficient to overcome alcoholism, many of us would have recovered long ago. But we found such codes and philosophies and theories of God and theories of being nice did not save us, no matter how much we tried. We could wish to be moral. We could wish to be philosophically comforted. In fact, we could will these things with all of our might, but the needed power wasn't there. Our human resources as marshaled by the will. The word marshal is really important in there. When anyone hears the word marshal, what other word do you think of that goes behind it? Martial law. As martial law, as you willing everything you got, martial law, being dictated by your own will, we're not sufficient. It failed, and it fails utterly. That's really important stuff, because the needed power, that one up there or that one wherever it might be, the one that we need, that's the one. That's the power that we need. And like, has anyone ever started the recovery journey, didn't really believe in all of this malarkey that we kind of talk about, but you really wanted to get sober, so you just kind of did the things anyway? Anyone? Okay. Robin, when you decided that, which was what, 8 months ago? 9? Things started working, right? And the point is that when you just even have a mustard seed of a belief and faith and you really want to change, the universe lines itself up to offer you the opportunity that's going to help yourself. And these are like the beginning pieces of the God shots, where somebody else would be that's just a coincidence. Don't think too much into it. But when you can fucking look at these things as not coincidences and you start believing, holy shit, God is there, or something is happening. I maybe don't even believe in God at this point, but when you make the concession to fucking change and you start listening to somebody and you start praying and saying these things fucking start changing. When I give somebody their initial readings for a sponsee, I give them like this text reading that I have about doing their readings. The number one thing is I tell them is be disciplined and do it every fucking day. Don't do it when you feel like it. If it says on awakening, then you do it on awakening. And I put in big capital letters on this text thing that I send people. Do this as soon as you wake up. Do not do anything else. Because everyone will do everything else, and then that, 3 hours after they're awake, they're like, oh, I forgot my readings, fuck, And then, but that's not discipline, man. And like when you do it in the morning and you do these things when you're supposed to do them, and like Robin, the universe fucking really helps you. Okay. Lack of power, that was our dilemma. Okay, we all have a substance abuse, we can't put it down, and we seem to always pick it up, so obviously I have a lack of power. Go ahead, Skidmore. Oh yeah, thanks Aaron. Eat that thing, cause fuck.
Hello.
Yeah.
Mic check.
Perfect.
Working now.
Are we good?
Yeah.
New batteries. Amazing.
On the bottom paragraph where it says, if a mere code of morals or a better philosophy of life were sufficient to overcome alcoholism, many of us would have recovered long ago. Is that like meaning like religion, as it's like kind of like if religion was like how can I ask this? Like if we could just go to church and that would be the outcome, and to get sober, then everyone would do it? Is that kind of like...
That could definitely be one of the angles of it, yes.
Right.
A mere code of morals, better philosophy of life. Oh, I'm just going to learn meditation.
Right.
I'm going to use the workout and the healthy eating plan with a little bit of like my spirituality. I'm going to go to church. All of these different things.
How many people here have read the book 7 Habits of Highly Successful People? Yeah, right on. Me too.
Thank you.
I've read self-help books. I remember I talked about this last week. I told everyone this story about how I had decided that these steps weren't for me and that I was going to just try and build my self-esteem. Well, that's another form of it, right? I thought that being a nice guy, and Bill touched on it. He's like, yeah, he did good things for a few years, and that's probably what helped Gord, carry on before it blew up in my face, for longer, right? It could have happened earlier if I hadn't have been doing walks for cancer, and I hadn't been serving on school boards for my children, and I hadn't been giving of myself. It probably would have blew up way sooner, right? So there's a lot of different ways that better philosophy of life, so that we want to be sufficient enough to overcome alcoholism. But once you pass that line, once we go over that line, there just isn't one, except for spiritual.
And the word spiritual, again, spiritual. How you get spiritual is through the rituals. And if the rituals are done, you become spiritual.
I love that.
Part of the rituals are doing your morning disciplines, afternoon disciplines, evening disciplines. These are rituals. The step 10 process is a ritual. If you do the ritual, which is a process, and the word ritual, when you look it up, it says a process that's done over and over and over and over. Or a ceremony that's done over and over and over and over. And when we really think about what we do, everything's a ceremony. Everything has spiritual connotation, or whatever the fuck that word is, to it. Connotation.
And in the chapter Spiritual Experience that Bill was talking about earlier, it also points out that there's 2 types. One is of sudden upheaval, like Bill saw a light in the hospital bed and dropped to his knees and prayed, and boom, he had a spiritual experience. But for most of us, spiritual, it's an ongoing thing that takes time to learn, right?
Lack of power, that was our dilemma. We had to find a power by which we could live. Think about that. Live. I want to fucking live, man. But when we first get here, it just means fucking stay alive. And it had to be a power greater than ourselves, obviously. But where and how are we to find this power? Well, that's exactly what the book is about. Its main object will enable you to find the power greater than yourself that will solve your problem. That's what the book's for. The book is to show you where God is in you through the processes. And when you first get here, you have a lack of power with the substance. And we need something greater than us to help us, obviously, but where and how are we to find that power? Well, it resides within me, and it's connected to another power. In the back of the book, in Spiritual Experience, it talks about the unsuspected inner resource. So if there's a source out there, there's a version of it in me, but it's all covered up, which we'll get into in this chapter. And when I first come here, it's a substance. But I learn as I stick around here that selfishness, self-centeredness, self-pity, that is at the root of my troubles, driven by 100 forms of fear and self-delusion, resentment, self-pity, fear, fucking whatever. All this stuff will be cleared away, and then you'll see that you're actually the problem. And it's actually not you who is like the God part, like the designed by God part. It's the ego version of you that needs to be removed, right? But you'll learn that. But what you won't learn is if you don't do it, if you don't do the things, if you don't do the steps, you're going to live on the philosophy and moral and philosophical convictions galore. This book is very philosophically comforting, right? Some of the guys that go to some of the meetings, they've seen me do this. Oh, this book is so fucking warm and fuzzy, and God is like, oh, so warm and fuzzy. It makes me feel fucking good. But that's what it seems like out there. God's warm and fuzzy, man. That's not why you need God, to make you fucking feel warm and fuzzy. The result of having God work in and through your life, through the processes, is he will make you warm and fuzzy. But if you don't do the work, you won't get that, what we're talking about. And then by which we could live. Like fucking live, man. That's all I fucking wanted. I just wanted to live like a good fucking life. And through this process of uncovering like the shit that's not God in me and removing it and finding out who I was. Sorry, Shannon, my ex-wife, that it had to go that way, but it did for me. Anyway. That's all I got, Gord. I didn't even finish the paragraph, sorry. That means we have written a book that we believe to be spiritual as well as moral. It means, of course, that we are going to talk about God. Here, difficulty arises with agnostics. Many times we talk to a new man and watch his hope rise as we discuss his alcoholic problems and explain our fellowship. But his face falls when we speak of spiritual matters. Yeah, when I first saw the basket go around in my first set of meetings, I'm like, oh yeah, you little fucking sneaky fucks. I totally thought that. Especially when we mention God. Yep. For we have reopened the subject which our man thought he had neatly evaded or entirely ignored.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop there.
The only thing I want to add is what Bill was talking about, the warm and fuzzy, shit. It's okay to feel warm and fuzzy. It's really fun. Actually, when I'm with my wife, I feel really nice, and it's cool. She makes me feel like I'm loved.
Bet.
She makes me feel like I'm loved, like no one else makes me feel, right?
I hope so.
God makes me feel that way sometimes, but the reality is that what God does for me, smart ass aside, is He has given me discipline. He has given me discipline to show up in the hardest of times. Today is an example. I showed up, and I just kept showing up. And then I get to come here and show up some more. And I'll tell you something, this is the last place I wanted to be tonight. The last place I wanted to be. But I knew I had to be here tonight. No offense, Billy. I love you, bud. You make me warm and fuzzy sometimes too. But I was waiting for it, but no, he's not touching that one. Power greater than myself will solve my problem. What is my problem? Self. My problem is always self. So when I get given discipline by God, that discipline and consistency is me showing up out of self. Being of service. We just talked about this. This whole program has turned into me turning into a person that wants to be of service, even though I'm not always that person. This will continue for my lifetime. And I actually love the discipline. It's easy to be there when things are warm and fuzzy. It's easy to say that God is great when I'm feeling awesome and I got a great job. It's not so easy when I lose that job, I have nothing, and I'm still staying sober and I'm still showing up and working with sponsees, even though I'm struggling. Discipline, perseverance, integrity, honesty, faith, humility. These are the principles that God shows me how to live in. That's it. That's all I got.
That's all?
That's all.
Just kidding.
He's making me feel warm and fuzzy again.
Okay, take it away, bro.
Okay. We know. Yeah? We know how he feels. We have shared his honest doubt and prejudice. Some of us have been violently anti-religious. To others, the word God brought up a particular idea of him with which someone had tried to impress upon them during childhood. Perhaps we rejected this particular conception because it seemed inadequate. With that rejection, we imagined we had abandoned the God idea entirely. We were bothered with the thought that faith and dependence upon a power beyond ourselves was somewhat weak, even cowardly. What is that? I thought I put that over here because I don't want to believe what you're selling. I believe in self. Exactly. I believe in me. And that ended up failing, right? But there's also some plausible excuses in here. Do you recognize those? People that believe in God are cowardly. I'm convincing myself that I have more power than I do. And it doesn't work, but I sure tried real hard. We looked upon this world of warring individuals, warring theological systems, and inexplicable calamity with deep skepticism, more plausible excuses. Just like my insanity to drink, followed by plausible excuses as to why that was a good idea, my determination not to buy into God told me that, well, look at the wars. Has anyone said that? Look at the people killing each other. Like, look at what's going on in Israel right now. They're all dying. They're bombing each other. I don't want anything to do with that. That's not the God I believe in. Plausible excuses. We looked askance at many individuals who claim to be godly. You know, you see those guys on I see reels. This is something that people will probably get because I would say something ridiculously old and no one will have heard of him. It's Billy Graham stuff, and okay, right on. But this is one that you see on reels online now, where you see the guys and they put metal to it, and the guys in the churches and they're doing this in the church and everything. And I look at those people like they're fools, right? And those people are driving Cadillacs and they're stealing people's money, and I judge them. Who am I? Who am I? I have no idea. So I look at them and they claim to be godly and I judge them because I believe in self. How could a supreme being have anything to do with it all? So if there's a God, then why are these people ripping off, old women, and why are these people fighting and warring and all that crap? There can't be any God. And who could comprehend a supreme being anyhow? So that's another excuse I used. God's too big for me to understand. I can't even buy into that. Yet in other moments we found ourselves thinking, when enchanted by a starlit night, who then made all of this? There was a feeling of awe and wonder, but it was fleeting and soon lost. How many people love sunrises or sunsets? Yeah? Me too. My wife and I love watching sunsets and sunrises together. The beauty of that, and I sit there and I go, my God. And I've come up with a term for it for myself, and I think, man, God has painted what a beautiful painting in the sky tonight, right? But then all my worldly problems come back to life because I get to work and stuff starts blowing up and I forget all about that. And I get back into self. There's moments of brilliance in my life, but everything around me, I allow it to eat me up. And I start trying to run the show again really quickly. I lose touch with God. Yes, we of agnostic temperament have had these thoughts and experiences. Let us make haste to reassure you. We found that as soon as we were able to lay aside prejudice and express even a willingness to believe in a power greater than ourselves, we commenced to get results, even though it was impossible for any of us to fully define or comprehend that power which is God. So I stopped thinking I needed to understand it. I was so broken that I needed to give it a try. I started giving it a try. And all of a sudden I start noticing really neat stuff happening. Hey, JR? Somebody give JR a mic, please. Or actually, JR has the mic. What am I talking about? He's our mic runner. Tell a story about the first couple meetings and, after you became willing, what was happening there?
Yeah, it just seemed after every step I'd get a couple of signs, like we would finish a step and we'd go in and it would be that exact step, or
At a meeting.
Even at a meeting, or even just finished, they'd read the page that we had just finished on, right? So.
And that would be the topic at the meeting you go to and stuff, right?
A couple of weeks ago, it was talking about my amends, how, I might owe a guy an amends or might not, and it was one name off the list, and then the very next day, that individual called me, and I hadn't spoken to him in months, so.
Thank you.
Yeah. Pretty wild.
You see? Immediate response. As soon as we can lay aside prejudice on any level, we immediately start to see God showing up for us. It's pretty powerful stuff. And I could tell you infinite examples of my own, but I thought it would be better to hear it from a guy who's brand new at this. Like, he's already experiencing it. That's really cool. I love hearing it from guys that are brand new at it, because that means they're doing something right. Much to our relief, we discovered we did not need to consider another's conception of God. I don't need to consider yours or yours or yours. Our own conception, I love this, however inadequate. Because trust me when I tell you, in the beginning, when I was, 30 days sober, my conception of God was absolutely inadequate. But it was not really inadequate because it was enough to get me going. You follow me? I don't know, was sufficient enough to make the approach and to affect the contact with him. So how inadequate is it, really? Later in this chapter, it's going to say God is everything or he is nothing. What was our choice to be? I choose everything. So, is inadequate really a good phrase there? No, I think it's exactly the way it was supposed to be. But it's hard to get there. Takes time. As soon as we admitted the possible existence of a creative intelligence, a spirit of the universe, underlying the totality of things, we began to be possessed of a new sense of power and direction, provided we took other simple steps. We found that God does not make too hard of terms with those who seek him. To us, the realm of spirit is broad, roomy, all-inclusive, never exclusive or forbidding to those who earnestly seek. It is open, we believe, to all humans. I love how they start naming different ways of saying it. Creative intelligence, spirit of the universe. Gets a little dramatic, underlying the totality of things. I mean, that's a little far-fetched for me in the beginning, but it's, it turns out it's pretty cool, right? But you want to talk about getting the cringes? I cringed when I read that first time for sure. But now I like it how they've given us other options, and we see that later in the book as well. They give us several different options, agent, you know, or what have you. There's all sorts of father, I'm the son, you know, I'm the student, he's the teacher. It doesn't have to be any one thing. We just have to reach out. And that's what it means by the realm of the Spirit is broad and all-inclusive. We can all be there. We can all meet. And the steps that we need to take are drawn out in this book. And if we follow them and we do the work and we dig in and we clear the wreckage and we start to understand the defects and we start to understand the pain we've caused and why we cause it, the fear that we feel and the action that it brings out in us, then we can start to rely on that higher power to help us be better than that. And when we clear up the wreckage and we make amends and we clear debt and we make good on things we've done, we grow in humility. We learn about who God wants us to be. And it's never forbidding. I don't believe in a punishing God. I don't believe that my mistakes are judged and that I will end up anywhere that is negative and evil. I believe that I just got to keep trying. And that's enough. Bill?
Okay, I'm not going to add too much. I think you covered all of that pretty fucking beautifully. You know, just to the point of like, when we're willing enough to try, we seem to get results, right? JR talked about the results that he got when he became willing. Robin mentioned the results that she got. And, you know, and I think as we move forward in our journeys, like, the more trust you give God, it's almost like, you know, the track record of like trusting and maybe doing things that you would not normally do. And then the results that come out of that, it builds trust, right? It builds like real fucking like, you're just willing to let God do everything and you're not really afraid of life anymore. And because of that, you're not running your own life. And then you don't get exhausted, and life really has a different sense of like how it treats you and how you treat it, and it's just an amazing journey. So I don't know. I think that would be about it.
I think that's a good place to stop.